beautiful people. Welcome back to Organizing an ADHD Brain, where the perfect place to start is right where you are. I'm your host, Megs Crawford. I'm a professional organizer, an ADHD coach, and a fellow work in progress. Because let's be honest, we're all work in progress. This season 3, we're talking about the messy middle. Not about the before, not about the after, but all of the stuff that comes in between. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff that comes in between that perfect before and after picture. So let's jump right in. I'm excited to record this episode today because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, not only working with my clients, but in my own life, in trying to jump to the end. So often we see these before and after pictures online. We see the things that we want in life, but we don't actually think about all of the stuff that goes into getting to that other side. Or if we do start to allow ourselves to think about it, it's too much and it prevents us from getting started in the first place. So I want to talk to you today about why it's so important to go through it, to actually go through the messy middle, what it teaches you, and how you get to the other side with more sustainability, with more understanding of who you are and what you've been through, so that it is something that you've changed into and not who you still are. But instead of using terms and trying to explain it all today, I want to tell you 3 stories. I want to talk to you about how I lost weight in bariatric surgery. I'm also going to share with you how I decluttered my own home. And I want to share with you how I quit drinking. Because these are 3 really large things that I wanted to happen right away. I didn't want to do the work. I simply wanted to stop. I wanted it to be easy. I wanted it to be something that just happened. And even sometimes now when I'm working with my kids and, they're upset about something or they don't understand something and I have to explain it to them, I find myself wanting to understand it immediately. I get frustrated because I'm like, no, that's just the way it is. It's okay, right? You're fine. Like these things that my brain sometimes tells me, or is perhaps some of the language that I learned when I grew up. And I'm having to remind myself that this is important, that they feel these feelings and that they also go through some of these things. Now, the difference is that when you have a coach or when you have podcasts or when you have people out there also doing the work or who have done the work, they can give you advice and they can give you little tweaks and they can help you understand things in little ways so that you're not trying to white knuckle your way through it. You know that this is going to be so worth it. And so that's what I try to do for my kids now, is I have to remind myself to simply let them be. Let them cry. This morning, we had a snow day yesterday. So today is the first day back after being away for break. And my 6-year-old woke up this morning and she's like, I don't want to go to school. She was crying. And immediately I wanted to say, we have to go to school. Of course we have to go to school. But instead, I remembered yesterday how much I didn't want them to go back to school either. And yes, also I do. There's like this weird thing with being a mom. Like I don't want them to be away from me, but also I need space and I have stuff to do and things to get done. But there is this overwhelming feeling that comes up when you're transitioning from one thing to another. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in this episode today. But I reminded myself that it's okay that she's simply going through this, that she's upset, and I'm going to let her be upset. And I'm going to be this source of comfort through the angst and stress as she's getting ready to go back to school. Because part of me doesn't want her to go back to school either. And that's okay. Okay. That was kind of what I want to get across today. However, so why can't we just let things be a quick fix? Why can't we just put a Band-Aid on everything in our life and let it be okay? Why can't we organize in a weekend? Why can't we pay off our debt in a month? Why can't we simply get the things done that we need to get done so we can put that behind us and get on with our life? Why can't we just do it? Right? I know that I've lived my life sometimes where I'm just like, okay, if I just get through this and it'll be great and smooth sailings, but it never is. It never is, because this is just life. It is life, And it is a life that we're choosing to live a certain way every single day. Some of us have more choices than others. Some of us have more privilege than others. And yet we make choices every day when we wake up, when we go to work, when we choose what we're doing, when we go to scroll on our phones. There's so much more at work than simply making a choice. So bear with me here. However, all of these things add up to where we are now. When we look around us, this is a product of all of the decisions that we've made. And then we continue to make decisions through our life that allow us to either change what our future is going to be or to continue to stay stuck in the same cycle over and over again. Quick fixes allow us to get something done that feels good in the moment. And we see the result almost immediately. So it feels good. It feels like we've done something. It feels like we're checking something off. But what it doesn't do is really ingrain in our body this new way of doing things. It doesn't actually help us understand that this is the way that we want to act and be from now on. Rewind back to the way that I handled Cora this morning. I had to consciously make a decision to say, Megan, you just need to be there for her and hold her and remind her that she is safe. And it is okay to have uncomfortable feelings going back to school. I had to consciously make that decision this morning. And honestly, I still consciously have to make a decision to brush my teeth every night. So there's some things that don't actually come naturally. I just know that they're required of me. When we make a choice, when we're trying to do a quick fix, it doesn't actually allow us to make the change internally that we need to allow this to stick with us. One thing that I've struggled with my whole life is being overweight. I remember it was probably around 8 or 9 years old. I started gaining weight and I used food as a means to cope with everything. I remember my dad used to tell me, it's just baby fat. It'll go away. And I'm like, Dad, I'm pretty heavy in the 7th grade. I don't know that this is baby fat anymore. And so my whole life, I thought if I could just get rid of this extra weight, then life would be easy. Then it would be better. Then I could conquer anything. And so there were a lot of different methods that I chose to try to lose weight. I tried to do it the quote unquote healthy way or fad diets. There was always a diet that I was on in one way, shape, form, or another. It was a 1,500 calorie diet, or maybe I was going keto. I was a vegetarian for 2 years, and that wasn't necessarily for diet. It was more because I read a lot of books about how our meat is super processed and all of that. And, I had an eating disorder. Talk about something that is not sustainable, at least in a way that could keep me healthy. There were so many different things that I tried, and some of them worked, at least for the time being, that allowed me to get to the look that I wanted, but it didn't follow my actual brain. I was still eating unhealthily. I was still using food to cope, and I didn't understand the implications. I also didn't understand why I was doing any of it. I simply was, and I thought there was something wrong with me, and I knew I needed to shake it. But to me, I just wanted to be skinny. I didn't want to change anything else. I just wanted to not be overweight anymore. Eventually, I did make the decision to have bariatric surgery. After I had had my 2 girls, I was gaining weight and I didn't feel like I had another choice. I also was not very familiar with ADHD or my patterns or understanding who I was in that moment. I may choose differently now, but I did what I did and I'm so happy that I did. But what I had to do in order to go through that journey is I had to meet with a nutritionist to understand and to learn what I was putting in my body and what's important to put in my body when I'm getting a body-altering surgery that is going to change the way that I eat forever. I also had to start meeting with a therapist that really helped me start to understand some of my body image issues, some of the ways that I've always spoken to myself, and some of the things that I would have to go through as I navigated this journey of losing weight. It was just because I was getting surgery to cut my stomach in half didn't mean that I was going to lose weight overnight. It meant that a lot of things had to change in order to get there. I had to go on liquid diets. I had to track everything that I ate. I had to incorporate over 60 grams of protein into my meals every single day. I had to drastically change what I was doing in order to even qualify for the surgery. And then afterwards, I had to maintain a strict diet and I had to listen to my body in ways that I've never listened to my body before. One of the most fascinating things that I felt happen, which I thought was just so interesting, was I would be full and I felt full and I hadn't felt full in a really long time. But because I felt full, I was genuinely annoyed because I would be eating something that I wanted to eat and I wanted to eat more of it because that was something that made me feel good. Right? Eating is fun. It's delicious. It's really great. And when your body is telling you to stop eating, you have to listen to it. This obviously was not a quick fix. This took months and years to first not only get to the size that I wanted to be, but to also start to understand why the heck did I feel annoyed when I stopped eating? And even as I lost weight, understanding the way that I spoke to myself, like looking in the mirror and saying, oh, it's not enough, right? I need to lose more. When will be enough? When do I get to praise myself? When do I get to tell myself what an amazing job that I've done? This journey helped me understand how to speak to myself in a way that was kind. I still find myself looking in the mirror and finding flaws, but then I also remember I have kids. And so when I show them my stretch marks, I say, that's because I grew both of you in my belly. And how cool is that? And also I was overweight. So like some of the stretch marks came from that too. But I have learned to speak to myself in a positive way. And what's fascinating about that is when I change the narrative, because I notice the negative thoughts and the words. I change the narrative and I say, I'm beautiful. That's beautiful. That's human, right? It's okay that I don't look like a model in a magazine. I'm not a model in a magazine. And there's nothing wrong with that. I really like being a podcast host. And for that, you don't have to see my thighs. And that's amazing. Cool. So cool. That could never have happened overnight. And the things that I learned throughout that journey have helped me understand how I can maintain a weight that's healthy for me. But not just that, understanding how to speak to myself in a way that was supportive instead of demoralizing. That was key to being at the point where it's, 3 or 4 years later now, and I'm maintaining a healthy weight for myself. In addition to that, I quit drinking. Now, this is something I've wanted to do forever. Drinking to me was never simply a social event. It was what I did. It was something that was fun. What do you want to do? I want to drink. I want to day drink. I want to go out for brunch and have mimosas. I want to have bottomless mimosas. I want to go out to bars. I want to sing. I want to do karaoke. I wanted to do all of that. And in my family, drinking was the way that we celebrated holidays. It just was. Thanksgiving, drinking holiday. Christmas, drinking holiday. 4th of July, drinking holiday. All of these holidays were about drinking. And at one point in my 20s, I just realized that this was not the way that I wanted to live my life. I didn't know any other life. I just didn't know that there was another way for me to possibly live. And I also didn't want to miss out on my family. I didn't want to miss out on these friends that I had. And that's what we did. I had FOMO at that point. I didn't want to not drink anymore because it meant that I would have to change my life significantly again. And at the same time, I truly wanted to stop drinking because it wasn't filling up my cup anymore. I couldn't stand waking up hungover. I couldn't stand the way that it made me feel. And I couldn't stand that it was the only thing that I felt could drown out my thoughts. That my constant overthinking nonstop, oh my gosh. So I tried over and over again to stop drinking on my own. I would go months without drinking. In fact, after I had bariatric surgery, they say that you shouldn't drink And so I stopped drinking until one night I was like, well, I'll just have a glass of wine and see how that is. And I tried it and I was like, oh, just one more and let's see how that feels. And it felt amazing. It felt great. I felt confident. I felt like it didn't make me sick and this could be a thing again. But I quickly realized that I started turning to drinking to keep me comfortable again because I didn't have food. I couldn't snack anymore like I was before. And so I quickly turned to something else. And I didn't realize that was happening in the moment, but it happened. And I decided to enter myself into a program to quit drinking for good. I was like, I need to know the things. I need someone to essentially coach me through no longer drinking anymore. And it worked. I've been sober since this year will be 4 years. I'm no longer drinking. And every once in a while, I'll miss it. And it's typically because I'm stressed out and I need something to shut it down. And I haven't drank. Despite everything going on in the world, there has been no drinking in my life. And I'm very proud of that. Every once in a while, I do miss the social aspect of it, but I found ways to combat that. But guess what? It was really freaking hard. After I did the program, I fell into a pretty deep depression. I was so depressed. And I was like, isn't alcohol a depressant? Aren't I supposed to feel so much better after this? Except that it had been keeping me at this sustainability effort, at this place where I could simply move forward and think about all of these feelings. Now I had no choice but to feel the feelings that were happening. And it was awful. It was so bad. And I hated that. But I did it. I went through it. Side note, I was going through my Spotify the other day, and during this time, I was a leader in the corporate world, and I told my team what I was doing, and they put together a Spotify playlist for me to pump me up and to keep me going. And that was one of the coolest things. I listened to that playlist every single day while I was on leave. But I needed to do the work. I needed to understand why I was drinking specifically, why I needed to quit, not why other people need to quit, not why other people have issues or whatever with alcohol, why I was doing it. I needed to understand why this was making an impact in my life and why I wanted to stop. I had to do the work one day at a time. I had to put in those days to understand. One of the hardest things for me that I realized pretty quickly was ordering drinks at a restaurant. It was that when it came time to order drinks, it was so hard for me not to order an alcoholic drink. What is that? That's so crazy. I didn't realize that that was going to be a thing. But as I kept noticing, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go out to eat. But no, it wasn't going out to eat. It was literally just the ordering of drinks. Once I was able to make it past the ordering of drinks, I was fine. Because I was still able to get a drink and I could order anything I wanted. It just couldn't have alcohol in it. And then there's this world of mocktails now, which is really fun. But I don't drink today because I put in all that effort. And sometimes it makes me sad because I loved a good pairing menu where you tasted the wine and the food and it's so neat. And I love hearing about other people doing it. For me, it doesn't bother me if you talk about drinking in front of me. My husband is a beer expert. That's what he does. That's what he loves to talk about. It would be rude if I couldn't listen to him. Now, that's my story. That doesn't have to be yours, but I did the work to get here. And then, of course, decluttering and organizing. Now, I haven't talked about so much of the brain things that are happening in this. And I can get into that if you want. Please feel free to email me, megs@organizinganadhdbrain.com. I'd love to hear your questions specifically. In fact, if you have any questions, please email me directly. I can't respond to the fan mail or you text message me. So please reach out to me and I'd love to answer any questions that you have. Or if you want to hear a specific episode, I'd love to hear some ideas that you have. But decluttering my home, this was, again, something that I was really curious about. I had no idea about organization when I was younger. I've talked about how my room was such a mess. I talked about how I would reorganize things in a way that I would move all the furniture around. Like everything needed to be a whole damn thing in order for me to get anything done. And still to that point, like I would shove things in drawers. I had little trinkets everywhere. Like every drawer was a doom box. There was no method with which I hung my clothes. It was just pure chaos and I lived and it was fine. That was my life. And I was simply very curious about how other people live. I also thought I was alone in it. I thought that I was the only person with a messy, ridiculous, chaotic life thrown all around me. I didn't realize so many other people struggled with the same thing. And that's another reason why I do this podcast, right? Because like when you go through it, you go through this coming out of your shell and understanding like, I don't want to live like this anymore, but I don't know how to not live like this anymore because everyone else is doing it. But here I am on my own. And that's just not the case. There are so many other people living their life where they also don't want to live like this anymore, but they don't understand their patterns. They don't understand why they can't simply do it. And they look at it as it's their fault instead of understanding that, like, no, you've trained yourself to be this way, but also your brain is this way. You have ADHD. And so one of the things that you're naturally not going to be great at is organization. It doesn't mean that you can't be organized. It means that you do have to put a little bit more effort into it, like brushing your teeth. Also, it can be more fun than brushing your teeth because you start to see the results and how they pay off a little bit more. Although healthy teeth are great too. I don't specifically remember starting to declutter my house. I just knew that as my kids got older, I had all of this kid stuff that I didn't know what to do with. And what really started me getting stuff out of my home was selling things on Facebook Marketplace. That's what inspired me, especially when I was home on leave, on maternity leave, or if there was a break. I thought that if I could make a little extra money, then that would help me get stuff out of the house. Absolutely did, just not very fast. It was harder because there's more roadblocks that came up. But it helped me understand that I didn't need to keep things. Because I was selling so many things, I realized that if this was something I needed again, I could go out and buy it secondhand and probably find a really good deal on something that I wouldn't have to spend as much money on brand new. And so that felt really neat in the moment. I then had a friend of mine whom I love, and she is dear, say to me as I was getting our house ready to sell, our first house, she was like, "Oh, wow, it looks so much less cluttered. I love what you did with it." And I'm like, "Oh, I had no idea I was cluttered. I thought I was simply a really good decorator and I knew where to put everything." Now, I didn't ask questions and she didn't elaborate. So it is likely that I was a really good decorator and I knew where everything was. And she was simply commenting on, I didn't have everything out anymore. I took things out and I put them away because of the pictures. But I started to notice a little bit more. I was like, oh, that's so interesting that she says that. And I started to notice that I loved my countertops when nothing was on them. And I started to notice that I loved having places to put things because that just made it so much easier to put away. I started to notice that when I was unloading my dishwasher and I had to put smaller plates on top of bigger plates, that was actually a barrier to me getting things done. If that was happening, then I would not unload the dishwasher as fast. Anything that had a barrier on these non-preferred tasks prevented me from getting it done in a timely manner. It was through all of this trial and error and action taking that I started to understand what made sense for me. And because I was taking all this action, it was something that I wanted to talk about more. So I would talk about it more with friends and people that also actually were decluttering and were organizing or were trying to find a way to make their lives a little bit easier. So I started to learn different things, different ideas. I started to read more books. And I realized that I wanted to live a life with so much less because I didn't realize how much the stuff was truly impacting me. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're at the point where you realize the stuff is impacting you. And
let's take a quick break.
If you're enjoying this episode, I have a quick favor to ask. Could you take just a minute to leave a review? I know. Every podcast asks, but here's the deal. Your review helps other ADHD brains like ours find this show. Plus, reading them seriously makes my day. So if something in this episode has helped you, made you laugh, or even made you feel seen, let me know by leaving a quick review. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you more than you know. Now, back to the episode.
I call this podcast Organizing an ADHD Brain because it's not just about the physical stuff in your home. This is whole body organizing. I thought that I could simply go into coaching and be like, let's organize your kitchen. And that is not the way that it goes. That is not realistic because our brains are so much more complicated and beautiful than that. We have to understand how you live your life. What are your patterns? Where do you put things? What are we going to do about it? And what are the small actions you can take to start to prove to yourself that you're actually worthy of this? Because going from point A to point B is a series of actions that allow you to prove to yourself that you're actually the person that has enough trust in yourself that you can make the decisions, the bold decisions on what you need to do to get to where you want to go. And it truly is a beautiful process. And it's annoying and it's stupid. And some days you feel so uncomfortable and you ask yourself, why am I here? The messy middle stinks. And it's also life. It's full of ups and downs. It's full of happies and sads. It's full of all of these emotions that can be true at the same time. And you had no idea. It's full of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I gave up again. And then realizing, oh, I can actually go back to doing the same thing because it was working. I just forgot I was doing it. And that's the thing with ADHD. So often we try these things and we're actually really good at it right away, but then it's not in the forefront of our mind anymore because we have 15 other ideas on how to change our life for the better, and we've started doing something different. But you get to come back to the things that you started. You're allowed to come back to the planner that you've only written twice. You're allowed to come back to decluttering a space that didn't stay decluttered because what didn't work before. You're allowed to ask those questions of what am I learning from this process? Because learning is the goal, not learning because you're book smart. Because most of you listening to this probably know way more than I'll ever know in my entire lifetime. And perhaps I'm not giving myself enough credit. You guys are really freaking smart. It's just that sometimes we're not taking the action that supports the things that we actually know in our brain. I'm going to come back to Cora again this morning. I know that my kids have to go through really hard stuff. I know that I can't fix it, but I still want to. I want to fix everything. And I want to take away all of those negative, yucky, awful feelings and just make it okay. And if I try to do that their whole life when they go out in the real world and actually experience all of these yucky, negative feelings, what are they going to do? Call me up and be like, fix it, mom. I'm probably going to jump in and try to do it. The problem with having a fix it mindset, and most of us are very solution oriented. Tell us a problem. Well, we've got a solution for you, right? Most of us are very much solution oriented. And yet we don't actually know the solution in our own life. Or because we're so solution oriented, we feel like we need to fix everything. We're reacting to the life around us. We're like, okay, I need to fix this. I need to fix this. I need to fix this, except we simply need to understand how to live a life that allows us to not let this be our norm anymore. We don't need to fix it. We need to do a little bit more trial and error. We don't need to fix it. We simply need to make a decision that doesn't allow all of this stuff to live in this one place anymore. We don't need to fix it. We simply need to say, oh, when I see this pile of stuff, I actually know that I can do that in 5 minutes, and I will because I proved it to myself time and time again. I don't need to fix myself. I just need to understand what is going to be my focus right now so that I'm not trying to do 80 million things all at once. I've told you guys before that I stopped talking to my therapist because she told me that I couldn't do it all one time. I forgot her name. Otherwise, I feel like I need to text her and be like, I'm so sorry. You were right, but also you didn't say the right words to me. Because I can do it all. There's so many things that I can do and accomplish in the world. I just can't do it all right now. And I have to remind myself of that time and time again. And it took me time and time again of signing up for things after things and trying to do everything for everyone else before I realized that I needed to do some damn things for myself. And once I was able to do some things for myself, then I could go back out and do more things for other people because it allows me to fill up my own cup. I'm also allowed to ask for help. I'm allowed to tell people when I'm sad. I'm allowed to let other people fill up my cup too, because I've been doing it for so many other people for so long. That's okay. The messy middle is the messy middle, because it is life and it is learning and it is full of failures so that you can learn what you don't want to do again. Sure, I'll tell you about my failures all day, but your failures are going to be different and you're going to learn new and different things and probably help me understand. In fact, there's a woman in my community who was going through a really hard time, and she shared with us that as she's feeling better, she feels this need to sign up for everything and to do all of the things. And she's holding herself back because she recognized this pattern of signing up for all the things when she starts to feel better out of coming out of this funk. And I couldn't relate to someone more in my entire life. And I think about her experience when I start to feel like I need to sign up for all these things. I notice this now because I start to question, is this my ADHD and FOMO acting up because I feel like I'm not enough and I need to do so much more in order to prove it to maybe myself, but the whole world that I'm capable of doing this? Or is this something that I really need, that I really want, that I have the capacity to do? I am not the same woman I was when I first started this podcast. And that is because every day I think about one or two things that it could allow me to grow in a way that allows me to be better than I was the day before. Not 80 things, not a million things. One or two things that can truly allow me to grow. Could be reading a book. It could be modifying a rhythm that I have to allow it to be better. It could simply be in the way that I speak to myself and giving myself some grace and understanding when maybe I've overbooked myself and I see that I'm starting to get burnt out again, and I notice it faster because it's something that I like to prevent now instead of getting burnt out and then regretting it later, able to live my life anymore. But I'm a different woman and I'll be a different woman tomorrow. And in 10 years from now, oh my gosh, you should meet her. She's amazing. I am who I am right now because I'm taking action. I shared with you so many of the stories that I have. And oh my gosh, I didn't even touch on leaving our home in Colorado and so many of the other things that we've been through over this last year. Oh, it's hitting home and it's real. Decisions add up. And then you start to understand the consequences of your decisions. And guess what? Consequences don't mean bad. It just means the reality of what has happened after you make a full decision on something. It could be bad. It could be good. It could be neutral. It could just be just part of the road that you're on to get where you want to go. And when you get where you want to go, you start to decide that there's other places you want to be as well. And you take small actions to do that too, regardless. You're exactly where you need to be. And in the event that you don't feel that way, I want to tell you why I say that. When I remind myself I'm exactly where I need to be, it reminds me that I'm doing my own work. I am in my own life. I don't need to compare myself to where people are on Instagram because I don't know their life. I don't know what they've been through, and sometimes they'll share, but when I'm just seeing a curated photo online of what's happened, it doesn't allow me to truly understand the hard work that's gone into getting to where they are. Maybe they do live a privileged life, but if I think about that's not going to allow me to be in the here and now. I get to say I'm exactly where I need to be because I can't go back in time and change anything. I'm exactly where I need to be because I'm not in the future and I can't be in the future. I'm exactly where I need to be because I have the day that I'm working in right now, and it allows me to take 1 or 2 steps toward where I'm going. I said this to a client the other day, and I'm going to say it to you too. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it's because these big, beautiful enterprises and homes that are beautiful and curated, like businesses that are like full of foundation and our kids didn't get to be 18 in the blink of an eye, even if it does feel like that. My kid's only 8 and 6, so I feel pretty good about that right now. But every day is a new day to make an experience, a memory, and a life that is worth living. And despite anything else that's going on in the world, we have certain choices to make that happen. I wanted to share with you that the community is still open. Organizing an ADHD Brain community is a monthly community where we meet to do body doubling practice. We do the non-preferred tasks together. We also meet to do decluttering together. Again, non-preferred, but it gives you a spot in your calendar that's already blocked off to do the stuff. We do group coaching together, which is my favorite time of the month. And we talk about the things that are happening in our life and the little tiny tweaks that allow us to get out of this stuck cycle. So we start to build this new reality of a world that's just a little less chaotic. Because regardless of what you see online, you do have the possibility of changing and working with your brain. And working with your brain just simply means understanding your patterns in the way that your brain wants you to live your life or tries to keep you safe so that you can say, I see you, brain. I see the way that you work. And I'm going to pause because I don't actually want to do that anymore. I want to do it this way. And you get to make a choice to do it that way. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a matter of weeks. It happens over time where you're persistent. When you stop, you come back to it and you continue to come back to it until you see this incredible relief that you can have in your life to live your life just a little bit better. And then over time, a little bit better than that. And over time, you have built Rome and you're like, holy crap, how did I get here? This is really cool. On that note, I hope you have an amazing week. I will see you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to Organizing an ADHD Brain. Just remember, I am not a doctor or a mental health professional. Everything I share here comes from my own lived experiences or my professional experience coaching other ADHD humans. If you need medical or mental health advice, please reach out to a licensed medical professional. What you hear on this podcast is for support and education, and how you use the information is completely up to you. For more resources, free downloads, and different ways to work with me, whether through coaching or the community, please go to organizinganadhdbrain.com. And don't forget, the perfect place to start is right where you are.